What if the only thing standing between you and your next level isn't your product, your service, or your hustle? It's the way you think? Today's guest went from corporate America to confronting his own mental health crisis and turned that breakdown into a breakthrough that now transforms entrepreneurs, veterans, and leaders. This is a masterclass in heart centered mentorship, mental resilience, and the mindset that separates those who plateau from those who grow. Stay locked in. Now available. Awakening I Am, Internal Awareness in an AI Age audiobook, and our Victory Builders platform, which integrated system for founders who execute, is open. Links in the description. We have gotten to the place where we can truly say that mentorship is important. Mentorship, coaching, all of these things. Like if you're at a level where you're maxed out, the only way that you can get to a level, like I'm going to use small numbers. You're maxed out at 100. You have 100 customers. And every now and again you get 110, 115, but then you retrace back down to that 100. It's not the product, it may not be the good, it may not be the service, is that you're not thinking on that next level. So usually you go from zero, when they're talking about numbers, 0 to 250. That's when they give you these ranges. The next range is 500 to 1,000, because they're not looking at the in between, because they know that those numbers are traits. But they also understand that there's a different mindset shift that happens when you go from 0 to 100, from 300 to 500, from 500 to 1,000. Now you're at this level where you're automations and all these things. This doesn't happen, and it can happen. I don't want to be 100% saying like this 100% can't happen unless this happens. It can happen just by happenstance. Meaning, when I first started my first business in construction, we made a lot of money, we had a lot of customers, and it just happened. People said, oh, these guys are reliable, these guys are good, but it wasn't sustainable because we didn't have systems in place. Mm-hmm. So although we had what looked and mirrored success, the finances is coming in, the phone is ringing, the guys are being paid on time, the truck is moving. Yeah, it looks like success, but under the hood, we were stressed out because we didn't have systems to manage. And when you don't have systems to manage, we may have needed to stay with 3 customers a year or 4 customers a year. When you find out where your wheelhouse is at, but how do you find your wheelhouse? And that's what today's episode is about, mentorship. Mentors that lead from the heart. What happened during the pandemic era is that everybody became a coach and everybody became a mentor. And they were just talking about things that they understood, but very few of them talked from the place of what they really, really knew or been through. And now that COVID is over, no more PPE loans and all of those things that help them along their way, we have gotten back to the place where coaching is really, really needed. And today's guest, we're going to talk about all things coaching, but we're going to talk about coaching through a heart-centered lens. My name is NaRon Tillman. This is Walk in Victory, where we sit you at the feet of the masters and have conversations to help you evolve your lives. Today's master is Dave. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Yourself? Thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, thank you. So when when you hear the phrase heart-centered mentorship, what's one of the things that pop out to you?
That's what I talk about all the time. It really is about that authenticity, right? Telling you straight out, what you could do. I believe everybody can do almost anything that they want to do. You just need the right guide. You might have the vision, and I really believe vision is so important, but vision doesn't tell you how to get there. Think about it when you're walking along a beach or something, or in the street. You might see the Empire State Building, because we're both from New York City, right? So you can see it from all over the city, but you're not going to start walking there depending on where you are just because you can see it, right? You can see it from Queens. You can walk it, but you have to also know the directions. So it really is, when you're heart centered, you know what you want to do. You know what you want to do, or you sometimes just need some guidance because your heart is so big. That's going to lead you. That's going to lead you into so many different ways. And what I try to do is I talk to people and figure out. Let's start with that heart. Like if you're a good person, I can work with you. If you're not a good person and you're trying to hurt somebody, take advantage, I won't work with you. But knowing that heart centered really talks about your most authentic self and that you know what you want to lead on. The things that you want to do, the changes in the world and the changes that you want to bring to some other people.
Yeah, because leaders affect change, and I think that sometimes is misunderstood. Where we're not just, even if you have a small industry, you're changing somebody's family. You're paying an employee. You're putting food on some children's table if the employee has kids. You're adding to the fabric of society. But what gives you? Let's dive into your journey a little
Sure.
bit, because one may say, well, who's Dave and what has he done? Like, when a lot of times when we're coaching, they're interviewing us as we're interviewing them,
Yeah,
right?
sure. No, of course. Yeah, no. So I'll tell you. So you can hear I have a New York accent. That's easy, right? But where did I grow up? There's a lot of people of New York accents. I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and my mom taught in Bed Stuy. So and I've been there when my mom couldn't get parents to go on trips. Class trips. She was a fourth grade teacher. PS 191. The what is it? The Paul Robeson School.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So I know different people. I'm not afraid to talk to different people. And I've been there. I played ball with the fifth grade class, the fourth grade class during graduation at Lincoln Terrace Park. So anybody who's familiar with New York, this is not the area most New Yorkers would go to, and that's what I'm trying
Yeah,
to go. So you meet people where they're at, and I remember my mom had been teaching for 20 years, and she could walk down the streets, which it's not. I mean, the neighborhood has changed, but then it wasn't as safe. But they all knew Miss Chametzky. I remember all these things, and it's getting to know people, and this is where the answer to your question comes into. Is once we get to know each other, we get to take it to a different level. And what I do is where I've come from, I've never sat on a high. I've always been blue collar, learning some things. I have worked in white collar jobs, but I'm always treating everybody the same. People might not have liked me, or I might not have always said everything the right way, but they knew where I stood. And that goes back to that heart centered leader is talking about who I am. Again, you might not agree with me with everything, but you do know for sure that no matter what I do, it comes from my heart. I lead with my heart. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and that's where life is. Because people want to show you when you're down on your luck, who's there by your side. And I'm one of those people who always try to be bad. Be that. I always go, how can I serve you? God put me on this planet to serve, and that's really what I believe, and that's that heart centered piece. So I've had jobs, I've had experiences. It gives me a bunch of skill sets that makes me so more unique than others.
so you lean heavy into mental health
Yes.
and and that area of because although we can, like me, I did construction, I did music, I did a number of things, right? We New Yorkers, whatever's
Yep.
going to write a check, we're going to probably try to do it, right? But then when we land on a thing, you land in the area of mental health. What was your passion behind that? And why is it that the thing that you started to really create your bones in?
Yeah. So well, the funny thing is that's what I got my bachelor's degree. So many years
Okay.
ago, I was finishing up my bachelor's degree at the University of Maryland. I was a terrapin, and I got into behavioral sciences. But at that time, I had a job. I was working corporate America, and it was just something I liked to do. But then around when I hit 40, I was having some challenges. I was having some mental health challenges. I was a very angry person, and I needed to go see a therapist. And God brings you, I really believe it, God brings you exactly where you are. And He might let you astray because that's free will, right? God will give us free will, but He'll also bring you on your path. And so He brought me to this path where I started getting back into mental wellness, not only for myself, but to help others. I took this course and I became certified in it called Havening. It's a healing modality that helps you overcome some of the obstacles that were in your way. And I started working. And to get certified in it, you have to work with 30 different people. You have to have 30 different
Mm.
case studies. So it wasn't just one of those, hey, sit in this class for a weekend and then you become something. This was actual real training. And then I had picked up some other resources that I used. And I was like, that is so important. I'm helping people. I worked with veterans and helped some of them through, they were diagnosed with PTSD. I'm not allowed to treat PTSD because I'm not a therapist, but I worked with those people in terms of some of their life things. They had trouble sleeping and things like that. And so I was able to deal with it differently and deal with some of their fears. And then when I started working through with these people, they were overcoming so much more. That's where I started my coaching practice, which has now grown into so much more. I don't know that I call myself a coach, because to me, a coach sends in the plays, right? Like later tonight, we're gonna have coaches. He's gonna draw up the plays. You know, a football coach puts it in. Even a baseball coach is gonna draw up exactly what you need to do. And if you listen to them, they'll do right. For me, I'm more of a mentor. I'm more of an advisor. I'm going to make some suggestions based on my experience and my knowledge to take you to the next level. And once you get to do that, that's where the power becomes.
And you've been able to leverage what you do and take it to a, like as you said, it started out with this thing you was getting some self
Yep,
care,
sure.
and self care is very important. But you had this entrepreneurial mindset where you was able to see past the self care into a mentorship. But now you're even helping out entrepreneurs, and it's not just this small niche market. How were you able to really see past, all right, these are a cookie cutter where most people just box themselves in, which is why you're a great mentor.
Well, thank you. One of the things was really when I was in therapy, the therapist showed me, like he shows all his clients, some of the things. And I didn't only, the challenge with some therapies or some therapists is people only work in that therapy room, in that box that we talk about, right?
Mm,
Hey, I went to therapy.
mm.
It's like a punishment, like I ate my broccoli, but I would go home and work on myself and I would ask questions for the therapist. So one, I don't have to be in therapy the rest of my life. Now there might be other things I need to address, but that's a different story. But I wanted to cure. I wanted to be able to see things differently and remove the obstacles that were in my way. I found some other obstacles eventually, but that's what happens is we keep continue to grow, and the things that we don't fix, it comes back to us. That's where, like for my podcast, Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat, sometimes you get a bat brought up to you, but normally when I talk about the bat, it's about bringing awesome thoughts. That's what the BAT means, is bringing some awesome thoughts or being authentic today. And, when we start doing those things, that's what takes us to that next level. So, using my experience, my therapist was like, look, I've been a therapist for 30 years. I've never seen somebody like you. He goes, Dave, you are like a rock star. And he goes, you really should do this. And that's what sent me to that course to learn how to be havening, to be a havener, a havening practitioner. Because I was different than, it's all the effort. I mean, you've been around, there's people who go to work, it's a 9 to 5, great. And I don't care what your job is, you can still be great at what you do. There's a great book, it's an old book called Fish Tales, about the fishermen, the guys who throw the fishes in Seattle. There's a famous market, called Pikes Peak, and where you could buy fish, and they throw fish. So you're like, man, I don't want to do that as a career. But those guys love their job. It doesn't matter what your job is. It's the fact that you love it. And when you can find yourself doing something that you love, it doesn't become a job anymore. That's where we all lose it.
It's funny that you would say that because everything has a system, and I tell people this all the time. To work in Long Island at Red Lobster's at Green
Oh,
Acres
I know.
Mall.
I'll go show you.
And I was a busboy. And that's when I first started, they used to give we used to bust down the
Yep.
tips. So at the end of the night, the busboy would get a portion of the tips and everything. And then they cut that out when I got there. I was in high school. And the great busboys, I noticed, because I didn't last that long, because I wasn't a great busboy, they had a system. I got into landscaping when I was 19. The great landscapers, like the guys that went from pulling out the weeds, had a system. They were able to get their jobs done faster because they was able to think it through before they actually. It wasn't just about physically pushing the mower, or it wasn't just about cleaning the table. It's how I'm going to approach the table, or how I'm going to approach the landscape, and it all starts psychologically. Let's explore that real
Sure.
deeply for a few moments because you deal with the mindset.
Yeah, so I have a great example for you, and this is
Mm-hmm.
how I explain it to people. Again, with the havening, so a rookie when you walk into right football, right, walk in like soon Mendoza is going to walk in and he's going to go, man, this game is fast. Not that he's not good at
Yeah.
it, he just hasn't been trained at it in a way. And then by the end of the season, he still might be have the same. He's still got the same skill set. He'll be a little bit better here, a little bit better there, but the game's going to slow down. Now the game hadn't slowed down. If anything, by the end of the season, the game speeds up a little bit more. And that's what we do mentally also. When you train yourself right, or you remove some of the obstacles that are in your way, then you could think quicker. But I always say, I want you to react slower, but think quicker. I want you to see it. And I didn't believe it at the beginning, but I got to tell you, there's a lot of things that we do in life that you can see it coming up and you can make that decision so much quicker. Even though you see it, you're like, why is the world working in slow motion? It's just that you know how to handle it much better. Now, I'm not perfect, but I know I handle things so much better now than I used to handle them. And using that piece becomes real powerful.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up because I teach mindfulness and yoga, as you know, in senior
Mhm.
citizen facilities and youth and young adults. So there's two different ways that I attack, right? So I'm dealing with a young person. I teach in a homeless shelter in Brooklyn. I'm getting them to imagine themselves in their future. So my challenge for them is when we're using the same brain, right? Imagine what do you want to be and imagine the steps that it's going to take for you to get there. So it's like imagining your future. But when I'm dealing with the seniors, I'm trying to get them to imagine, think back about when you had all of the flexibility in your body.
Yeah,
Remember, some one is looking ahead and one is remembering, but it's the same muscle.
it is. And I just read this great article. So, one, for the younger people, it really is a situation of if you can't see it, you can't. If you want to be as good as Kobe Bryant, right? Kobe Bryant wanted to be Michael Jordan. And right, so what did Kobe do? Kobe read about that Michael Jordan hit 50, 50 free throws on the end. I don't know what, but Kobe was like, all right, I'm going to hit 75, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Kobe was, after some losses and even after some wins, he was still in the gym. He was a gym rat, right? They go, oh, it's a gym rat. Well, he knew what he wanted. He wanted to be in the greats. He didn't want to just be a good. He didn't want to be just a little bit above everybody. He wanted to be one of the greats. And we can argue back and forth on what he did, and maybe he was, and maybe he wasn't. But guess what? He was there working. And if you keep working, right, there's that 10,000 hour rule. You got to do, if you want to be an expert at something, you have to do 10,000 hours. There's no way around that. And when we do that, that's what leads us to that next level. So it's all about repetition. And for the older people, this is where I just read an amazing article. I don't know the exact quote, but they had 10 men go away on a retreat. Some like they were in their 70s, and they said what they did is when they sent them away, they sent them and they told them it was 20 years earlier. So it happened in the 1970s. They said act like it's in the 1950s, and they took pictures and they did science. And you know what happened? After a week of those people thinking of themselves, they had a little bit more mobility, right? It's our body, so we're not going to go back to when we were 12, but it's one of those things that you start moving yourself more forward. And they looked pictures, they had pictures, and they had independent research saying each one of the men looked better. So I love going back into, an older neighbor who sort of takes care of me, but I love talking because you could see she's in a mid to high 90s, and she looks great. But I love talking to her, and making her smile and things like that because that's life. But she's talking to me about stories like, my kids don't see me enough, my great grandkids don't see me enough, this and that. But I got to tell you, I come in and you could see life come back to her. So life is what we remember. As long as we're able to do that and our minds are aligned in that way.
So we'll get you out of here in these
Yeah.
last few questions. The mind is well, I just speaking of reading articles, I was reading an article like we can train the mind to actually think of two things at one time, but that's a whole nother level of thinking. But the average mind can only think of one thing at a time. It's either the past, which is where our guilt center is, the future is where we get that
Yeah.
anxiety,
Hmm.
or being present. We have so much happening around us. If we turn on and we've all been trained to wake up, turn on our phones, check out the news, check out the latest trending topics. We lead with negative clickbait titles. How do you, when you're working with people, how do you get them to turn off that mind that's looking backwards and saying, "Oh, Dave, man, if I would have played a one instead of a four, I would have been a millionaire." You know what I mean? Or the anxious mind is, "I don't know how I'm going to make it." You see gas prices going higher, and because we can all have those conversations. What do you do to get people to stay centered and grounded in now?
I punch him in the face. But no, but
With your back.
no,
Yeah.
but no, it's the goal to be present. So there's a lot of exercises that I do, and I mean, because especially in some of the work I do when I help people write books. So I want them to go to in the past. That's okay.
Yeah.
And while the past wasn't always good, there's ways we could talk about it, and it's the language we use. So even with the gas prices, so guess what? The gas prices might go up tomorrow. Yes, for sure. I can't argue with facts, but I could say, what could we do differently to feel it differently? And because we only have this, so there's only so many days in the month and months in the day and dollars in between. But what can we do? And sometimes it's gonna suck a little bit. But if you think about it, life will happen to us while we complain about it or not. So how do we turn it around a little bit? And it's not fake it till you make it. You're allowed to understand it. But then there's a lesson in it. What could you have done differently? What could you teach differently? If I don't have this money, well, why don't you have that money? And is it something that you need? Right? So gas, we sort of need. That's a necessity, sort of like milk, bread, and all the basics. But what have you done? Are you driving the gas to go to Starbucks to get a $10 latte? Do you need that, right? Let's be honest. Are you going to things that you don't need? Yeah, we want, and I get it. You need your coffee, you need your things. It's once we start kind of peeling away a little bit, we get to see things differently, and that's where that clarity comes into.
Well, I want to just say to those of you who are listening, because I like to be transparent with our audience in real time. This conversation wouldn't even be had without this podcast. I did an interview with a gentleman some months back, and then I went back on his show. And when you're planting seeds, you don't know when the harvest is going to come, right? And a year later, year and a half later, I get a phone call. Again, not expecting anything, or a text message, or inbox on LinkedIn, wherever it is. And now we're actually sitting down talking about bringing, because we're both New Yorkers, bringing our powers together. The stuff that you do
Sure.
and the
Yeah.
stuff that I do, and how we can find a synergy and helping out humanity in a deeper level, and not just for New Yorkers, but for everyone. And I wanted to highlight that because some sometimes people are doing something and they don't see the immediate results and they just quit. Right? The results are not going to be immediate. But let's end talking about resiliency when you're not getting any clicks, when nobody's listening to the show, but you still turn on the microphone, or you still show up for your students, or you still show up for your teammates as the coach. How does that lead into good habits? And then what are the rewards from having those good habits of consistency resulting?
Yeah, well, consistency is for two reasons. So why are we doing it? So, but the one quote that I really want to go, when is it the best time to sit under a tree? Today. When is it the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. Because but when's the next best time to plant a tree? Today. If you didn't plant it 20 years ago, you can't sit underneath the shade. But if you keep waiting for that day to plant your seed, then you're never going to grow that tree. And
Mm,
part of that is also just the opportunity that we take and we run with in doing the things that need to get done. You have to do it. If you want to get good at something, I said 10,000 hours. Now, when people told me that, I was like, nah, man, I don't want to spend 10,000 hours. I don't want to be a great speaker because, man, that's going to take a long time. Time is going to pass anyway. What are you doing
if I,
with it, right? So you want to get good at something, you got to be prepared to be really bad at something first. And that's the consistency, is learn from it. Now, I could tell you, if you don't practice the right way, you're going to not learn the right things, right? We could practice all day long. 1 plus 1 is 9, right? We could practice that all day long till you remember it. It'll never happen. 1 plus 1 will never equal 9,
no.
right? But let's figure it out differently. Is then if we did a test and say, man, 1 plus 1 didn't equal 9. Okay, what did it equal? Oh, it equaled 2. Okay, so 1 plus 1 equals 2. Great. There's a learning lesson. I learned it. It's knowledge. Now I got to apply it. So now, when you and I work together, guess what? That's 1 plus 1. That's 2. That's powerful, right? That's a prayer. There's a lot of stuff that you could do. You can lean on me. I can lean on you. There's a lot of power in learning exactly what you need to do. And that's what we need to do, is just learn. So if you're not sure where you're going to go to, that's why you need to have mentors. You've had mentors. I still have mentors because
Me too.
I don't see it all. If you can see it all, it's climbing up that hill, climbing up that mountain, and you get to see that much higher than you were before. Having a different perspective gives you so much more knowledge that you get to ask questions. And it's that power of asking the questions. Some people are embarrassed, right? I don't know the answers because we remember from school. I got picked on all the time.
Shame.
Dave,
Yeah, me too.
yeah, Dave, do you know the answer? No, I don't know the answer. Yeah, I don't know
Shame.
those answers.
Shame.
Yeah, right. And but what they should have done is, why don't you know the answer, Dave? Not, they're telling you, well, you didn't study hard enough. Well, sometimes maybe I needed to learn differently. Chemistry was a great, perfect example. You put me to memorize all you know, the different elements. Yeah, I got some of them, but I don't have all of them. But you put me in a lab when I get to do with my hands, yeah, I'm good. That's why when I try to translate the things when I speak to my corporate clients, I don't go, well, let's just go practice. Let's go figure it out, right? You got to talk to them. I bring in my baseball bat. I'm like, let's teach you how to swing a baseball bat. I know how to do that. I'm like, okay, but Do you have perfect balance? You know, why aren't you a major leaguer? Well, I don't have the skill set. Okay, that's good. But did you want to be that and you just don't have the skill set? That's okay. But what did you learn from the sport, right? You know, by playing sports, you learn what it is about being on a team. You learn how to do certain things. And then you also learn how to be, at one point in every sport, you're by yourself. You're a receiver in football. You're the quarterback.
Mano a mano.
Right? Even a lineman, you know, where you're working with somebody, but at the end of the day, it's NaRon and Dave, right? If I'm blocking you, one of us is going to win. You're either going to get past me or I'm going to get past you, depending on what we're playing. And it's the same thing in everything. It's how we break it down. That's where you mentioned earlier about, you know, that going forward, that anxiety. It's sometimes we create our problems and make them too big, and by making them too big, I want you to break it down to a little smaller, because that's also how we achieve success. If I told you you have to memorize the encyclopedia, well, we don't have to do that anymore, right?
We don't have to do that
Yeah,
no
but if I
more.
told you to start memorizing something and it's 20 pages, let's just say, be like, I can't do that. Yeah, sure, not the first day. But if I told you just this time, could you remember the first line? Can we do something small and then build upon that success? And there might be other ways for you to learn. We all learn differently. And that's really where we start becoming much more powerful by doing those things and learning what we need. And that's sort of where our education system lets us down a little bit, because
Yeah.
everybody needs to learn differently. Now they can't. That's where the challenge for them is. You can't go 30 people and teach 30 different ways. I mean, Montessori does it a little bit, but you know, but you really can't, because you have to have smaller classrooms, and that's where that's successful. But the real answer is break your problems that are in the past, in the future. Break them down, figure out, or talk to somebody who can help you break it down so they become less, and take little stepping stones, little learning lessons. And the things that are in the past, guess what? When you drive a car, which is larger, the windshield, or the rear view mirror,
The windshield.
right? That only goes forward. So even when you're driving
Yeah.
in reverse, you're not using the windshield to drive in reverse.
No.
So always think about the bigger picture as you're working forward. The things that are there, yeah, you might have done something bad. I know I've had things that I'm less proud of, but guess what? You have to let it go. It's not paying the role, and let it go and figure out how you can rectify it. If not to that person, if you did something wrong to somebody, but how you can make sure that version of Dave isn't any longer available to anybody else.
Well, there you have it, everybody. I told you we only set you at the feet of the best. This has been a masterclass in leadership, mindset, and all of those things. We don't ask you for Cash App, Venmos, any of those things, donations. Not knocking any content creators that do, but what we do ask for is that you support our guests. All of Dave's information is in the description. His podcast is LinkedIn and the various things. If you're writing a book and you need a coach, that's what he does. He helps you to get your story together. Let's utilize our guest. Secondly, we ask that you hit like, share, and subscribe. Your likes, your shares, your subscriptions help these conversations get into the ears of somebody that need it. If you're listening on Google, Apple, or any other platform that allows you to leave a review, those reviews go a long, long way. Please leave a review. And finally, Awakening I Am, Internal Awareness in the AI Age is out. The link is in the description. We have the audio link and the physical book link. If you prefer either or, you can order it right now. And for all of our builders, the Victory Builders is here. Go and don't be stuck. We have platforms for you, and not only the platform is here, but we also offer assistance. So we have everything that you need to help you increase your walk. Don't walk with your head down. Don't walk it making excuses. Dave and I, we choose to walk in victory, and we invite you to join us. Peace.
Thanks a lot, bro.
Thank you, bro. Bang. That was